Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we pitch a fit and threaten to hold our breath until Donkey Kong 64 comes to Nintendo Switch Online. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. Can I ask you, Patrick, where do you come down on celery? Do you like celery?
Yeah,
do you
I
not
like
celery.
I like celery. I feel like it has a few specific uses, but generally I'm in favor of all of them. What do you got? Celery
do you like raw celery?
I like raw celery.
Yeah, I like raw celery too. I feel like celery's a divisive vegetable. Like vegetable platter. You got carrots,
Yeah.
you got celery, you got, we'll say, tomatoes, you like little tomatoes.
Yeah,
you
sure.
got broccoli.
Broccoli sometimes.
What are you going for first?
Well, let me ask you this. In this spread here, what kind of dips do we got? Is it just like a ranch? Or is there also like hummus and like some other little dippables?
Let's say that you're buying it got bought from the store. So
it's probably
a
just
ranch
the Hidden Valley Ranch cup.
Yep.
Okay, then in that case, I'm probably going for carrots and occasionally the broccoli. If there is like a red or probably a red pepper sliced up into strips, then I'll go for some of those too. Maybe less on the celery in that case,
because you're leaving the ranch behind.
I like to dip those other things in the ranch, but I don't need a scoop of ranch. And I feel like celery is good for getting a scoop of something. If I've got like a hummus or like a flavor hummus of some kind, or like any kind of like a bitchin' sauce or like any kind of dip like that, give me a celery, because then I can get a big heaping scoop of it on that shape that celery is perfect for.
Yeah, I see. How do you feel about roasted broccoli? Speaking of broccoli.
Oh, love it. It's one I absolutely love it. I think it's like a roasted broccoli. I love it. It's great. It's like the cornerstone of my diet. I'm less excited about a raw broccoli on a platter. I know I listed it as one of the ones that I will go for.
Right. Yeah.
With a ranch sauce. I wouldn't do it with a hummus.
Yeah. I don't need my broccoli to be drier and crunchier.
No, but you need it to have a char on it, because then you can have that delicious char.
Oh,
what are we talking about? No, it's delicious.
No, I'm sorry.
Do you not like when a vegetable or anything has a char on it?
No, I like lots of charred vegetables, but broccoli is
what?
Yeah, I think it's
really
revolting.
No, okay, well then we disagree on broccoli. I'm pro broccoli.
I like broccoli fine.
It doesn't sound like you do.
Don't put it near a roaster.
So what is your preferred broccoli preparation then? I don't mean for this to be as combative as it sounds.
Well, I'm taking it that way.
Okay, let's do it then.
No, I don't know. I guess I like it steamed or raw. Those would be my choices.
Sure,
but
I like steamed too.
There was a period where my husband had bought a huge bag of broccoli of the florets from Costco.
Yeah.
And so
that's a race against the clock.
It was. And so every night we were having steamed broccoli, and by the fifth night I just broke down. I'm I just couldn't take the smell anymore.
Right.
It was just too.
Should have roasted some of it.
Would have rather died.
It's you can put salt and garlic powder and pepper on there, make it delicious. All right, we're at an impasse here, Mark. I can't even look at you. If you would like to look at Mark and I, you can head on over to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you are supporting us at the 8-bit or the 16-bit levels, you get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries. We are currently making our way through Season 2 of NCS Arcade.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk about Elite Beat Agents for the Nintendo DS, which we'll be doing in a couple of weeks. partly because then I can close the book on it and hopefully not have some of these songs stuck in my head anymore.
Right.
It is both a blessing and a curse.
Yes, it's a blurse for sure. That we have to hear these songs over and over and over again. Some of them super fun, songs I already know, songs I already like, and then I'm like, why am I listening to a Good Charlotte song? Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
So anyway, if you have access to Elite Beat Agents, play along with us. We'll be having a fun time discussing it shortly. Also, if you are following us for free on Patreon, you get access to our listener feedback episodes where people send in emails about the games that we're playing, and we discuss those emails. Our Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge listener feedback episode is going to be posting imminently. So follow us for free if you haven't already, and you can listen to that. And then lastly, if you are following us, supporting us at the 4-bit level, you have access to NCS Detective Club. So if you want to hear us talking about, 2 episodes of Columbo with Ryan Mogi, you can do that there. And then, let's see, Discord. If you are not in the Discord, email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
And you can have conversations with people. Look, Gamescom is going on right now. Not any Nintendo stuff going on there, but games.
Yeah. There's an MEO, the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club demo out.
Ooh, yes.
People are talking about lots of Nintendo stuff, and we would love for you to join us.
Yes, so get in there. We will send you an invitation. All you got to do is email us. All right. Mark, we have got to... we do like a state of Nintendo Switch Online and discuss what first-party games are missing from those libraries. Now, sometimes when we do a topic like this, I feel like you and I talk about Nintendo Switch Online a fair amount. And sometimes when we're talking about it, it's more of like a wish list kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're just like, what games do you remember and want to play on Switch? But we wanted to do something a little bit more targeted today and discuss first-party games that have not yet made it to the individual libraries.
Right, because when Nintendo Switch Online launched and you had the NES library, over time Nintendo has filled out these libraries quite a bit.
Right,
but they didn't.
Some better than others.
Yeah, but they didn't start that way. They always had some heavy hitters, but Nintendo has always left us wanting a little bit more. Like there was always a lot of times there was something missing.
Right.
But I feel like the libraries have filled out really well, and we thought it would be interesting to go through and see what is left, because kind of the expectation going into, at least for me, for the next Switch hardware is that all of this stuff that is available on Nintendo Switch Online, all these classic game libraries, are going to roll over in their current form to the new hardware.
Yeah, that's my assumption as well, but I feel like that's always been such a nice, easy marketing beat for Nintendo, right? Of like, oh yeah, we're rolling out 20 NES games or whatever. And they did that on 3DS, they did it on Wii U, they did it on Wii, and obviously they've been doing it here. And I just wonder what they become if maybe they can start doing DS games or something like that. But yeah, it's I worry about them not having. I worry about them; they're fine. But it'll just be weird to not have that marketing beat of you can play Super Mario Brothers 3 again.
Yeah, it will be.
But ultimately, it will be fine. Mark, I'm taking it back. I'm no longer worried. Okay, so let's just start with the NES library. And the NES library has so many games on it already. It is the biggest library of all the rest of them on Nintendo Switch Online. But there's still a pretty sizable number of first-party games that are not available as part of Nintendo Switch Online. And so you want to just go through them one by one and maybe talk about why they're not there. Some of these will be evident pretty quickly. And also whether we think they're gonna come to the system or not, and whether we care at all.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so these are arranged by release year and then alphabetically within the year. So if you are trying to crack the code on why we're talking about certain games when, that's why. So for the NES, we're going to start with Clu Clu Land, a sort of busted Pac-Man like. Have you ever played Clu Clu Land?
Okay, I thought that I had,
Yeah.
but now, I don't know if that's actually true or not, or if I just watched like gameplay of it or something like that, because I was looking to see where it was available. It's obviously not on Nintendo Switch Online.
Right.
So-
It was on like the eShop for at least Wii U, probably Wii as well. And it's included as part of NES Remix.
But I didn't own, like, I
Yeah.
never bought it on the Wii Virtual Console if it was there.
Right.
I didn't own a Wii U. I didn't own NES Remix. I bought the 3DS ones, but I don't remember. I think, and it's not on NES Classic Edition, which
Right,
is where I
right.
thought maybe I'd played it. So no, I don't think I ever have played Clu Clu Land. What about you?
It's possible that you played it like here if we were ever
Oh,
playing
maybe,
NES
maybe.
Remix at my house. I gestured over to my TV and Mark looked at it.
And here it is
Oh,
now.
you're playing Clu Clu Land as we speak. It's a game where you do a podcast with your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the way the game works is you're playing as this character that it's an overhead view, very much like Pac-Man, and you are trying to collect little dots while avoiding enemies. But the character just sort of like barrels forward unless you grab onto a peg and like from that peg they kind of like rotate around. Am I explaining this well? Is it very?
It's a difficult concept, like
Yes.
gameplay concept, to try to explain.
Well, let me tell you, it is a even more difficult gameplay concept to execute, because like you have like one button for the left hand to grab and release with the left hand, and another button to grab and release with the right hand, and that's really the only power you have here, the only control over the character you have. But like if you're going down, now like your right and your left are sort of like switched, right? Because like
Oh yeah.
so it becomes really difficult to kind of like wrap your head around where you're sending your little character.
And you're trying to amass these like coin type
Yeah,
things.
you're like you're like connecting like these dots between things and then like looping back around and connecting the like collecting the little rupee thing that appears when you. It doesn't really matter. I think it is mostly a bad game and like a frustrating one. So I don't need to see it ever come to Nintendo Switch Online.
I feel like the completionist part of me
Right.
would, like, I agree with you. If
I just wanna know,
Clu
yeah,
Clu
yeah.
Clu Clu Land,
Right. Not Ku Klux Klan.
if Clu Clu Land
There you go.
came to Nintendo Switch Online, I would maybe, because I don't know that I've ever played it before, turn it on for a little bit
Right.
so I can experience it. But if it never came, I would rest easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. And also, I mean, because we already also have like Nintendo's other Pac-Man-like game, the Famicom's Devil World, which is a much better game than Clu Clu Land, and you can play that right now. So, and was not normally available in the West until it was released on NSO. So, I'm saying we don't need it. Meh.
But
Thumbs down for me.
But before we move on from
Yeah.
Clu Clu Land, I just want to shout out an article that friend of the show, Drew Mackey, wrote on his website, thrillingtalesofOldVideogames.com, about Bubbles, the protagonist of
Yes.
Clu Clu Land, being the first female protagonist of a Nintendo game, at least outside of Japan.
Well, that's huge. So, all right, Clu Clu Land, welcome aboard. All right. Next up, I think we've got some games that are all like, it's obvious why they're not there. So, should we just rattle off these next 5 games sort of in
Yeah.
quick succession here? So they are Duck Hunt, Gyromite, Hogan's Alley, Stack Up, and Wild Gunman.
And Gumshoe.
Yeah. So these are all games that rely heavily on either the Rob the Robot peripheral, Robotic Operating Buddy,
I think that's right.
or the NES Zapper, the light gun. And there's just like, I get like, you could fake a Rob the Robot, right? Like if they made like a virtual Rob the Robot to be like pretending to push buttons for you and you would just like see him on the screen.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Like, if as part of the frames
Yeah.
on Nintendo Switch Online, they have a little illustration or a little
Yeah.
rendering
Of Rob the Robot,
Of
yeah.
Rob.
And you could just see him
Going
like
through the
lifting up the
actions.
tops and like pushing the buttons.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think I've seen Gyromite in action.
So Gyromite is the one that's like a platformer kind of. Is that right? Where like the scientist is
I think so.
is running, and then you're using Rob to open and close doors.
I think so.
So that way
yes.
the scientist or whatever it is little character can make it through the level.
Right.
Okay.
Like why not let us like play with a virtual Rob the Robot,
I feel like this would be
or sell me Rob the Robot.
Well, okay, so there's that one, and then there's Stack Up, which is the other Rob the Robot one. And I feel like if you're going to release these, you have to do it in like a burst.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Because they're pretty, I'm guessing they're pretty thin. I've never played either of these games. And so, but I'm guessing they're pretty thin experiences.
Yeah, they got to be.
So just get it out there.
Right, just get it out there. So I say yes, rubber stamp. I however you have to fake the Rob the Robot thing, I'm on board with it. And then I don't think there is any way. I know Duck Hunt has been made available on like the Wii U Virtual Console, but like it uses the like Wii Remote pointer controls, which is not actually fun. I guess you could do that with
a Joy-Con.
With a Joy-Con?
I think the problem with the Joy-Con is that it lacks, this is crazy to say, the precision of like a Wiimote.
Right, the pointer precision, because it doesn't have the sensor bar.
Yeah, and so, that was a something that you encountered a lot when I was playing Skyward Sword HD, is you're constantly having to recalibrate.
Right.
And the fun, as it is of these light gun games, is kind of the precision.
Right.
And that would definitely be missing. So I feel like you could fake it, but it would be such a poor approximation.
Right.
Like, yeah, I understand why Duck Hunt, Hogan's Alley, Wild Gunman, and Gumshoe.
Right. Not Gunshoe.
Gumshoe's
that's a Bayonetta game. Gunshoe.
Yeah. Gumshoe is the one that's the most interesting to me, because it's another one of those like platformers,
right,
where a detective, I think like his daughter got kidnapped, and so you play as this private detective, and he's like platforming through these levels, but you're using the light gun to
like clear the path or something.
Clear the path. Maybe when you shoot, he jumps or something like that.
What if they like brought these games over, but it was all like touch control based, so that because like if you like tapping on the screen, that's the same level of accuracy as like shooting with a light gun, right?
Right. Oh yeah, that's interesting.
And maybe they would be less satisfying, but like just like again, the completionist in me just like wants an opportunity to, if not actually like have fun playing these things, just like experience them and seeing them in some capacity.
It is interesting that these games that require these peripherals like Rob or
the Zapper,
like some of them, like Duck Hunt, I feel like is fondly remembered, but I think we talked about it during our ABCs of NES. Like, it's not a particularly fun game. Like, it has diminishing returns.
It definitely does, but like Duck Hunt has that like Nintendo design aesthetic magic. The way the ducks look, the way the dog looks, the way that like field of like the hunting field, like everything is just, and the music and the sound effects are all like just perfect little presentations of a very simple gameplay concept. And then there's like the skeet shooting part of it too, which felt like a magic trick,
right,
on NES, because it fakes a 3D effect of like these things disappearing into the distance. So like I think Duck Hunt as a game has some like genuine value. The others maybe less so, but yeah, I'm also very curious about Wild Gunman and Gumshoe, games I've never played.
Yeah, I've never played Hogan's Alley either.
I've played Hogan's
less
Alley,
interested in
yeah,
that one. And honestly, Wild Gunman doesn't, because some of these early NES games, I'm not a huge arcade gamer. Score chasing doesn't matter to me. So like Wild Gunman, a lot of these are just curiosities to me.
Right,
it would be interesting to play it, but it would be a short experience where I would just,
Right. And I think for both, if Nintendo were to bring the Rob games and the Zapper games with whatever accommodations, those could be their own special marketing beats and would be fun, right?
Yeah, I wonder if they would, how they have the N64 like mature.
Sure, that
app,
it would be a separate app.
If it's like a separate app for
maybe.
these, because everything else is more that they've brought over is more or less a faithful recreation, but these obviously
They
just
take
like
some
a
work.
port.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next on our list here is Popeye. And you and I talked about this recently, that Popeye is entering as a property, is entering the public domain next year. And Popeye being one of the like sort of foundational works for Nintendo, both in arcades and I guess less so on NES because by then they had Mario. But even still, like the NES Popeye is a first-party Miyamoto game. So like, yeah, it would be awesome to have access.
It would be really cool. Another one that I've never played before and would be interested in experiencing just for the sake of being able to do it.
Yeah, I've only played the arcade version. I've never played the NES game. And I've never played the Game & Watch game, but it seems very cool.
Real quick on Clu Clu Land.
Yeah.
So it is on Switch as part of the arcade archives that Hamster put out. So the arcade version is on Switch.
Is it like versus Clu Clu Land or just
it possibly because
Yeah,
that's how like
interesting.
versus Super Mario Brothers was released
right?
as one of those arcade archives from
Yeah, that's interesting. From Hamster. Yeah.
just a thing.
All right.
A little about me, a little about Clu Clu Land, a little about Hamster, a little about
Hey,
arcade archives.
And if Hamster puts out arcade Popeye,
Well, there we go.
there we go. That's what I would be more interested in playing that game. Either way, it's the time for Popeye. But so yeah, we're both like, yeah, absolutely, bring it over as soon as it's in public domain.
Yeah.
Next up is Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So I had this one separated out from the like Mike Tyson featuring Mr. Dream, which is available on NSO right now, just not the Mike Tyson version.
This will never come out.
It'll never come out, so not even really worth discussing. So moving on to Short Order and Eggsplode.
I had to look up what this was.
I don't know what this
and
is.
some of these blew my mind. So, because I didn't realize there were not a lot of games for the Power Pad. This was a game for the Power Pad. So, it was 2 games. Short Order is a Simon. I'm reading from Moby Games.
Yes.
Short Order is a Simon-like game in which you are given an order and need to make the burger exactly as the order says.
And
so,
you're doing it with the Power Pad?
Yes, let me show you the illustration. So
Okay.
each of the ingredients have like 2
Gotcha.
places on the Power Pad that you need to stand.
Sure.
So for the burger, you would stand on row 1 and 2.
Or dots 1 and 2.
Dots
yeah.
1 and 2. And for cheese, it's like 3 and 4.
So are you like pushing them like rapidly, or are you just standing on them?
I think you
You're just
stand
pushing
on
them
it.
as buttons with your feet.
Yes, that's my interpretation.
So again, like another thing that they could like recreate with like touchscreen inputs or something like that.
You could, but that like of all of them feels the least fun of all of these like touchscreen replacements.
Sure. I mean, I'm also just not. This doesn't sound like an exciting game to play anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
Eggsplode is a game where you destroy bombs that a fox is placing underneath chicken nests
sure.
before they explode, destroying the chicken and the eggs. And so it's not clear to me how that plays, but again, it has kind of the Power
it's got
Pad
the layout
grid.
of the Power Pad.
So maybe you're stepping on the buttons, like the circles that have bombs under them.
Again, make that a touchscreen game, and I think it works.
And then, so I feel okay with Short Order and Eggsplode never being released on Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, me too. Next up is Tetris. Now we have the Game Boy Tetris on NSO,
which is definitely, I would say, the more iconic of the two.
It's tough because NES Tetris has like a place in the like competitive or like speedrunning scene as like the default Tetris. But obviously, like in popular imagination, the Game Boy, like the fact that Game Boy Tetris is there, kind of like fits the brief of like make Tetris available.
I guess probably the NES. I never owned the NES version of Tetris, but having color probably helped.
Yeah. I think it would be cool if this was. I mean, we have 3 different versions of Dr. Mario, right? Like there's the Game Boy one, the NES one, and the Nintendo 64 one. So like, yeah, give me another Tetris.
Yeah, be fair to Tetris.
Be fair to Tetris. Next up is To the Earth. This is another light gun game.
Yeah, which I had never heard of.
Me neither. I also had to look it up. Bring that along as well.
Yeah, you're like a spaceship trying to make your way through space, and so you use the light gun to blast other enemy ships and asteroids and stuff like that out of the sky. I had no idea this existed.
Yeah, me neither. But yeah, I mean, let's all of those, all the light gun games, like let's find a way to bring them over, because that sounds like fun. Speaking of another light gun game, Barker Bill's Trick Shooting.
And this one is like a shooting gallery carnival game type thing.
Yeah, he's a carnival barker. It's not a dog. It's not like a ancestor of Rusty. Although, wouldn't that be great?
That would just be delightful.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just be broken record in like any of these light gun games. Let's just like bring them all on over. Next up, NES Play Action Football.
Is it a cheat to just be like, sure?
I mean, it's maybe a cheat to just be like, sure, but also I'm like, you played a little bit of like Tecmo Bowl, right, on NSO or like the on Nintendo or NES Classic, maybe?
Probably on the NES Classic.
Okay, yeah. Is Clu Clu Land on NES Classic?
No, it's not. I looked it up.
Not?
I looked it up. It's not on there.
Well, then they're making like specific choices about Clu Clu Land then. Let's bring it back.
Yeah, that's right. The fact that they're withholding it from us.
Yeah, now I want it.
Now you want it.
Now I want it. I didn't before. I couldn't care less about Play Action Football.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me either.
And then where are we?
So we have Nintendo World Championships on this list,
right?
Which would absolutely be a historical curiosity. That would have been neat if they had released it at the same time as NES or Nintendo World Championships NES edition. But this is not really a game. It was a game cart that was used in the 1990 Nintendo World Championships, and a few of them exist, and you can pay exorbitant amount of some money for them, but it's not really a game.
Right. And that's really, I mean, we have some like notable like also rans to go over, but like that's kind of it.
Which is
impressive.
Really impressive.
Especially considering how many of them are not on the system because of hardware limitations, right? That we don't have zappers, that we don't have power pads, that we don't have Rob. There's really only a handful, or because Mike Tyson is in it or Popeye is in it. Like everything else, it seems like if they could, they did.
Yeah, except for Clu Clu Land, which they're ashamed of.
Right. Now I'm even more sure that I do want Clu Clu Land. And I will never play it. So the only other two like curiosities that we wanted to bring up here are Mario's Time Machine and Mario is Missing. These I don't think developed or published at all by Nintendo.
Yeah, I think they were licensed to a company that created educational software.
Right.
And they did versions of them appeared on the NES plus the Super Nintendo plus on home computers.
Right.
And I haven't played either of these. Have you?
No, me neither.
But what I was reading
about, they're notoriously bad, right?
I think so. But also what I was reading is that each of them are pretty different. Like they have the same.
Like each version?
Yeah, they have like the same concept, but like the home computer versions are more of a point and click adventure type thing, whereas especially the NES versions of Mario's Time Machine has much more platforming in it, and then the Super Nintendo version kind of splits the difference between the two.
Yeah, interesting. Just because it has a few more buttons that it can kind of get closer to replicating that point and click adventure stuff.
But I think because these are like not officially like Nintendo developed Mario things, we're very unlikely to see them. But they must be easy to emulate.
Yeah, I mean you would think so. And like they fit that like edutainment kind of like educational software thing that we just saw Donkey Kong Jr. Math finally come out on NSO, and that is the only game that bears the educational series little tag on it. And so maybe it would be cool to have these that are also like educational games that you're never going to play more than like a minute and a half of.
Yeah, again, they should break it out into its own discrete app called exactly that.
Right.
Games
you will never play.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then also just like a quirk of the way that I harvested these game titles. Versus Dr. Mario was listed on here, which I don't. Yeah, not actually an NES game. Was never a Famicom game, but just and we mentioned them already that a lot of the Versus games are available to play via Hamster's Arcade Archives. But like it would be neat if they did a Nintendo Versus system, even though it's mostly just like tweaks on NES games.
Yeah, I mean, it would be neat if how Capcom released that like
Yeah, the arcade stadium. Yeah.
where you bought the game and it came with some, and then they also released additional games or that you could buy separately.
Or you could just buy like a whole collection at a time. Yeah.
It's neat that Hamster's been able to release these arcade versions, but it would kind of be cool if on NSO, Nintendo, one of the new apps was like arcade.
Yeah.
And it had these arcade versions rather than like the NES ones or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and then there are, we obviously already talked about Popeye. But yeah, that like Nintendo made a bunch of arcade games that are like specific for the arcade. The arcade version of Punch Out is specific. There's that arm wrestling. Was it just called arm wrestling? The one that's like in the Punch Out engine.
It doesn't. How do you play it?
I don't know. I think with just like buttons. I think it is basically it plays like a Punch Out game in that you are anticipating like you're reading the like giant sprited character and like pushing buttons in like responses to various prompts.
I don't know that I've ever seen that. That's
one
interesting.
Of the characters that you wrestle against is an ape with like robotic implants in its head being controlled by a little girl.
That's good.
Isn't that good?
That is what I want in my video games.
It's exactly what I want in my video games. Also, probably my movies and my comics and everything else. So yeah, just a little note here of like if they did want to introduce another library, the like just Nintendo arcade machines would be there. I don't know that there would be that much excitement or enthusiasm for it. But
I know that's the thing. Same with like Game & Watch, right?
Yeah.
They could also
I'd lose my mind.
They could also release a Game & Watch
collect
like NSO app. But yes, would there be enough enthusiasm for it?
Okay, so I feel pretty good about that. Mark, should we move on to another library?
Yes.
What do you want to just do? I know Game Boy would be next, like chronologically, but do you want to just hit the Super NES and just like knock it out?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so Super NES, only 3 games.
This was truly shocking to me.
Only 3 first-party games have not made it to NSO. The first one, I don't even know what it is. Did you look up Battle Clash?
No, I didn't.
Okay, we're gonna look up Battle Clash. But then just to note that the second one is
yes, I did look up Battle Clash.
Yeah.
It's a Super Scope game, which it was the the Super Nintendo's Zapper, but instead of being like a handgun, it's a bazooka.
Right, as featured recently in the Nintendo Museum Direct, of course.
That's right. Oh my gosh, that Nintendo Museum employee looked so awesome, just holding that,
the Super Scope. Yeah.
Did you own a Super Scope?
No, I mean, Hannah did, but so I played with it a little bit, and I guess there was also like the game that came with the Super Scope 6, right? It was just like a cartridge that had like 6 little mini games in it.
Oh, okay.
That may not have been published by Nintendo, but actually, then I guess Yoshi's Safari would be another one that we don't have listed here, but again, also maybe wasn't made by Nintendo. I don't know.
Right, but we already had some on this list that were not developed by Nintendo, but were just published by them.
Yeah,
Yoshi's Safari would also be on this list. Anything for the Super Scope that we may have been leaving out, none of those are on Nintendo Switch Online right now. None of them probably ever will be, but would be good candidates for that spin-off app that we keep talking about.
Yes, I agree with that. And then Super Play Action Football. Just play action football again. I'm saying I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
And then the last one, and it feels like the ship has sailed on this, is Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Because they released the remake.
Yes, but
still sell it for $60.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if there will become a time in the future where they're like, you know what, the remake's been out long enough. that we could
Right.
put the original on Nintendo Switch Online and it would be fine. But I don't think they will do that.
I don't think they will. I think as long as anyone is buying the remake, they're not going to put it on there, which is a shame and like a weird shame. But you know, the remake is great, so like just play that.
It would have been cool, and it's not a surprise that they didn't do this, but it would be cool if on the remake, if the remake also came with the original. Like you had the option.
Yeah, I
like,
agree.
You know, like
Yes.
on the cart, you had the option of also just like playing the original.
Right, or if it was in a down that you could download it, you know,
Yeah.
like yeah, I agree. Because you can already toggle between the music, right? Why not toggle between the to the original version?
Yeah.
All right. Now should we tackle the Game Boy library?
Yes, because this is the Game Boy / Game Boy Color, so there are a fair number of games here. It's one of the newer libraries on NSO.
Right, which means there are a lot of games missing, right?
Yeah, from the library currently.
So let's start talking through them.
Okay, we're starting with golf and tennis, so I'm just going to throw them both together. This is another one where I'm like, sure,
Yeah.
let's get them on the library.
They're launch games, right? Like it would be nice to have the launch lineup complete. Even though we do have the like Mario Golf and Mario Tennis that were released on Game Boy Color, which are obviously just like better games, more fully featured games with that fabled RPG, those fabled RPG elements that everyone likes so much. So these games are, functionally irrelevant. There are versions of golf and tennis on the NES, which are better versions of these games. So it's probably okay, but yeah, come on, they're launch games. Let's get them all on there.
And then we have this gosh darn play action football.
We're never gonna escape play action football.
It was released for everything. Yeah. And once again, I'm indifferent.
Yeah, I can't
put it on there. Don't put it on there.
Yeah, I gotta say, I can't care.
You don't. Yeah, there's too much else to care about. My capacity
right
is at maximum.
Things that we might care about: Solar Striker.
This is a shooter, right? Like a
yeah,
shmup?
it's like a vertically scrolling. You play like a plane in space, shooting at stuff. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Bring this over to NSO.
The next one on here is F1 Race, and this is a Game Boy game that I owned. My parents must have bought it for me at some point or another. But so I owned F1 Race, and for that reason, it would be fun to have it on there for like the nostalgia factor.
Right.
I was never very good at it. Couldn't get very far in it, but I definitely put time into it.
But hey, if they're gonna put like Mach Rider on the NES and like those other games like that, that behind the car like driving, like yeah, absolutely. Let's get F1 Race on Game Boy on there. And next up, this one actually feels like a legit crime. Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, not on.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
NSO, right? I was surprised too. Game Boy has a lot of titles that feel like egregiously missing, and like this is a perfectly functional Kid Icarus game. It's the worst of them, but like, you know, it's a pretty good Kid Icarus game.
Yeah, when we played it for Kid Icarus Month a few years ago, my memory is that we thought it was fine.
Yeah, it works. It does. So you know how in NES Kid Icarus, when you like walk off the right side of the screen, you appear on the left side of the screen. The Game Boy one kind of does that, except it scrolls with you the whole time, so you can really trick yourself into thinking you're making progress in a vertical stage as you're just walking endlessly to the right.
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah.
I found that so confusing in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm like, where am I supposed to be going? These levels are endless.
Right, and it turns out, no, you just didn't understand what was happening.
Next up is Radar Mission, which, if I'm remembering right, is Battleship.
Yes. Yep. That's it. It's Battleship. Yeah. I mean, come on, give me Battleship. I do think that Radar Mission was probably exciting because of like the link cable functionality, and that you could just basically play Battleship the way you would play Battleship, where you wouldn't be able to see your real human opponent's board. And so, maybe not as useful on something like the Switch.
But you can play all of these games
Yeah, you play them
online as
online,
part
so,
of
yeah.
Nintendo Switch Online. But the other thing with Radar Mission is it had a second mode, which is more like of an action mode, where you are piloting a submarine, and when you go under, you see a radar of all the different
That's
ships
cool.
and stuff. And then when your like periscope comes up, you're actually like scanning
Yeah.
the horizon. I don't know, kind of neat.
Kind of neat. But I guess I don't really care. We have Yoshi on this list, which I guess like Yoshi was also available on the NES, right? Maybe even Super NES. Feels like Yoshi was one of those games that was just everywhere, right?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever played it. It's a puzzle game.
Yeah, it's a puzzle game that is very similar to Panel Upon, but not exactly.
Yeah, different enemies or objects are being dropped from the sky, and Mario's holding like two plates.
Right, and he has
And-
to like twist them around.
Yeah,
right?
he's like switching hands, and you're trying to stack the correct things, and maybe Yoshi eats them. Like I said,
I don't think
I've
we
ever
need
played
this.
it.
I don't think we need this
Yeah.
one. Throw it out. Next up, Kirby's Pinball Land.
We played this
Yes, we
as
did.
part of Kirby Month a couple of years ago, and
Pretty fun.
I remember really liking it. So
Yeah.
yes, bring Kirby's Pinball Land to NSO, please.
It's super great. It's got like 3 or 4 different like tables that you can play pinball on. There are boss fights that you play like with pinball. It's great. We will get to Kirby's Block Ball later in this list, but these feel like similarly fun, great Kirby games.
Yeah, totally.
It's weird that neither of them are on NSO, especially when Kirby's Tilt and Tumble is.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like, they're not afraid of putting a weirdo Kirby game on there. Anyway, next up, and this, I know I said that Kid Icarus was a crime. This is actually a crime, right?
Yeah, so the 1994 Donkey Kong.
Yes, colloquially known as Donkey Kong 94.
Yeah, because the name is kind of a misnomer. It does start as the original Donkey Kong,
Sort of.
but then it
Yeah.
becomes much more than that. It becomes like a puzzle platformer.
Right.
Mario's flipping around, and it's
Mhm.
basically the precursor to Mario versus Donkey Kong.
Yes. Which maybe is a reason that they didn't want to like release it so close to them remaking Mario vs. Donkey Kong. But like, don't be cowards. It is one of like the best Game Boy games. So like, and like maybe the best execution of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong formula.
This one feels like an inevitability to
It
me.
does feel like an inevitability. Next up, Wario Blast featuring Bomberman.
I've just got to be honest. I've never liked playing Bomberman.
Hey, same. Also, like, if there's any like weird, because they gotta like share it with, is Bomberman a Namco character?
Sounds right.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? Who cares? I don't like Bomberman either. So that one I'm fine to let go.
But it is a Bomberman game, basically,
Yes.
with Wario and Bomberman in it.
Speaking of Wario, next up we've got Wario Land, aka Super Mario Land 3.
Yes. Yes, a million times yes.
I love this game. It is my favorite Wario Land game. Get it on the Switch.
Yeah. Yes, and then it will complete the Mario Land trilogy, which another one that they've been interesting about because we had 6
Yeah.
golden coins. We had
Mhm.
Mario Land 2 pretty early in the library.
I think it was a launch game, right?
And then it wasn't until just a month or so ago that we had Super
Right.
Mario Land released. So this reminds me of like the Donkey Kong Country strategy.
that they were
for-
holding it. Yeah.
Yeah, that they slowly released them on Nintendo Switch Online. And so I think we will get Super Mario Land 3. The fact that it is a Wario Land game, a series that they
Have
haven't
let
done
go
anything
fallow.
with for
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
long time makes
Yeah.
me a little bit nervous, but this one I feel like we'll eventually get it.
I think we will too. I have more confidence in it than the other Wario Land games that haven't made it over yet. Just it's still a Super Mario Land game, so like it feels like they have to at some point. Next up, we'll actually maybe just talk about all 3 of these right here, right? Donkey Kong Land, Donkey Kong Land 2, and Donkey Kong Land 3. The Game Boy sort of like ports, not really.
Yeah, they're not really ports. They're like new games using similar ideas and, like rough approximation of assets from the Donkey Kong Country series. I thought that these were on Nintendo Switch Online.
They are not.
But I had bought them when they were on the 3DS eShop before the 3DS eShop
makes
closed.
sense.
And they're pretty bad.
They're rough hangs, yeah, for sure. And I'm almost like, again, like just the completionist in me is like, yes, bring them over, but I'm also like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Also infuriating the way that these things are like labeled and enumerated, how they're styled. Donkey Kong Land, fine, normal, good. Donkey Kong Land 2, the like Arabic numeral 2, and then Donkey Kong Land Roman numeral 3. Why do they do this, Mark?
And especially because Donkey Kong Country 3 is a 3.
Is the numeral 3.
Yeah.
And they all have subtitles. These don't. I don't know what's happening with the way they title these games. We sort of already mentioned Kirby's Block Ball, but just to reiterate that I thought that was a great brick breaker.
Yeah.
And an excellent use of like Kirby as the ball.
Yes, it was very fun. Kirby Star Stacker is another puzzle game.
This one is very much paneled upon.
Oh, okay.
And we have the maybe it's not. I was thinking of Avalanche. No, Avalanche is Puyo Puyo. So yeah, I'm getting lost in the details here.
Kirby Star Stacker is a Tetris-like puzzle game.
Okay, fine, great. Yeah, of course. Bring it over.
Okay, here we get to the meat of it because there's going to be a number of these, and I don't know that we necessarily need to speak to each of them individually. The Pokemon problem.
Yes,
right.
The mainline Pokemon problem.
Blue, red, yellow, gold, and silver. What becometh of these Pokemon games?
So, it was such a big moment on the 3DS when they made red, blue, yellow, and then crystal and the other one. Sorry, gold and silver. Made them available on the 3DS, a virtual console.
They were always the top-selling games on the 3DS eShop.
And each different language that they were presented in was its own SKU, and they were still at the top.
Yeah.
So like you're taking worldwide sales and chopping it up into like, maybe like a dozen different pieces, and they're still at the top of the charts. So incredible stuff. Sort of makes me think that this is a perfect candidate for it is a different app, and you have to either be a Plus expansion pack subscriber, or it is a separate thing that you have to buy.
Right, or like subscribe to,
yeah.
To continue to have access. Yeah,
and have like integration with Bank or Home or whatever it is now.
Right.
Like that all makes sense that they would be like, here's the classic Pokemon app that has all the Game Boy Color, and GBA Pokemon games.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I'm totally of the opinion that one way or the other, they're going to charge for these, whether it's individual purchases again or it's a subscription service. I don't think that these will ever come to Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, I mean, it could still like come to Nintendo Switch Online. I just think it'll be a separate price point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like either a third tier of NSO, or like a separate like NSO Pokemon edition or something like that,
Yeah.
That you have to subscribe to separately. But it would be super cool. And like, even though we're not Pokemon people, I think I would still be interested and check it out.
It does feel like the nuclear option if they are ever if they ever panic about like NSO subscriptions.
Sure.
And they want a quick bump.
Yeah.
Like that would be an easy way to do it. Like you could deploy this and that would definitely get people to subscribe.
Yeah. Well, and then I wonder if it could also be like, oh, and by the way, we hold your Pokemon hostage if you let like the subscription lapse, right?
Right. I think the only downside to doing that is it would just be short term. I mean, yes, you would get people to subscribe, but on the other hand, for the longest time, Nintendo felt that those Mario games, like those NES games, the Super Nintendo games, that they were valuable enough that they didn't want them part of a subscription service, and you
Right.
did have to buy them individually, but eventually they changed their mind. So never say never to Pokemon becoming part of NSO, but I really think it's going to be something separate.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see it either way. I do expect them to be separately monetized in either subscription or sales. Next up, Wario Land 2, Roman numeral 2.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, bring it. Weird that Wario Land 3 is the one that's available on Game Boy Color.
I wonder if it's a 6 golden coins, like Mario Land 2 type situation, where I felt like they led with that one because it was of Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land
Sure.
2.
It's
It's
just
the
like
one that
the better
feels
one,
the
yeah.
most like a Mario game. It looks like a Mario game
Yeah.
that people are using, and so maybe. But Wario Land is such a kind of obscure series now
Right.
that I don't. Yeah,
It's
why
not,
choose
it's
the
not
third
really
one?
it's not really iconic enough that you need to have like the quintessential one out there. So yeah, I don't know. It's confusing. Wario Land 2 is also weird in that the Game Boy Color version of it came out in the States first, and then the regular Game Boy version came out in Japan after.
That is weird.
And I've never understood why. So they could release both versions, either Game Boy or Game Boy Color.
So Bionic Commando Elite Forces.
Hilarious.
Crazy that this is not a Nintendo series, but Bionic Commando Elite Forces was published by Nintendo, and it was the first game developed by NST, the
Oh.
like North American development
Interesting. Yeah.
like first party team that Nintendo has up in Redmond, Washington. Yes, this is such a weird
Yes.
cultural like
Totally weird.
I haven't played Bionic Commando on the NES. It's not a series that I have much affection for, but it's such an interesting historical curiosity that it'd be cool to see it on there.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting that like here's where we start to see sort of like weirder games coming around as being published by Nintendo, and I think part of that's got to be, oh my God, the Game Boy's popular again after being on the market for like 8 years,
Right.
And it's all because of Pokemon. Again, maybe just a function of how I harvested this list, but I'm realizing right now that Mole Mania isn't on this list.
Ah.
A Miyamoto developed Game Boy game, which rules, came out in 1996, and I just had to shout it out here because I would feel bad if we were talking about Game Boy games that aren't on NSO and didn't mention Mole Mania.
Conker's Pocket Tales. So we're in the later days of the Game Boy. Like
We're
you
in
said,
1999.
where it had been
Yeah.
resurrected.
Yes.
I've never played Conker's Bad Fur Day. I don't care about Conker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. We'll obviously talk about Conker's Bad Fur Day when we get to the Nintendo 64 library. I especially don't care about Pocket Tales. Bad Fur Day, I would at least like turn on and be like, wow, this is weird. But these games were like being developed in tandem. So Conker's Pocket Tales came out before Bad Fur Day. And like they had wrapped on it before they had their sort of like revelation about Conker, where they were like, he can't just be another cutesy platformer mascot guy. He's got to have attitude and like basically be a playable episode of South Park. So Conker's Pocket Tales, he's just like a sweet little
Oh, that's so funny.
platformer. So it's a totally different in tone and like presentation.
Ooh, that makes me
style
want
game.
it more because it's
Right?
a weird curiosity.
It's a weird curiosity. So we like those.
Pokemon Pinball. I did own this for the Game Boy Color. Thought it was really fun. It had, if my memory is correct, it had like
It has a Rumble Pack, yeah.
functionality.
Mhm.
So this would be a fun one. I would like to see this on NSO.
And we see, like the trading card game and like the Pokemon Stadium games, Pokemon Snap, all this kind of stuff on NSO. So yeah, why not? Also the pinball game.
We talked about Pokemon Yellow.
Yep.
As part of those mainline Pokemon games. R-Type DX.
No, get out of here, R-Type. I don't need you. I don't want you. I reject it.
Super Mario Brothers Deluxe.
So, have you ever played Super Mario Brothers Deluxe?
No.
It's basically just the original Super Mario Brothers, but on a Game Boy Color.
Interesting.
I get frustrated when they're like, and we're bringing out, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3, so you can play Super Mario Brothers 3 again. Like you can play it on the NES, you can play it on All Stars on Super NES, and you can play it here. So I'm kind of like, I don't need another way.
This one would at least be a little bit interesting because they would have had to reconfigure
Yes.
the well, maybe not the game, but at least like, the resolution of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color screen were so much smaller
Right.
than on the NES. So it'd be a different experience. So
Right.
for that reason, I'm like, bring it over as like a curiosity.
Curious. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's where we land on a lot of these, right? Is like,
Right.
oh yeah, what a curiosity.
Yeah.
Next up is Crystallis.
Let's not skip Tetris DX.
Right. We already have like the main Game Boy Tetris. I feel like we did this already.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Crystallis. So I've never played the NES Crystallis. It's like an action RPG.
Right.
And from what I was reading of the Game Boy version, or maybe it's a Game Boy Color game,
it is
basically like a remake in a lot of ways. The ending is different. Some of like the story is different. So, and I think Crystallis has a good reputation. This would be an interesting one, to me, if they brought it over.
Yeah. I agree with that. I'm also never gonna play it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm never gonna play Crystallis. Okay. Next up,
Donkey Kong Country.
Insane that they made the Donkey Kong Land games and then also just straight up ported Donkey Kong Country to the Game Boy Color.
I mean, if you needed any illustration of how strong Donkey Kong mania was,
yeah,
when Donkey Kong Country was hitting.
And insane that they've like let that franchise sort of like languish. It feels bad. I don't know that we need this though, right?
Right. So many other different, better versions available on Nintendo Switch Online.
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon Gold and Silver we talked about. Pokemon Puzzle Challenge.
I assume that's like Pokemon Puzzle League on Nintendo 64, but who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of like a sure.
Yeah, of course. Bring it over.
Warlocked.
Next up is Warlocked, which is like a top-down strategy game on Game Boy Color.
Oh yes, I was reading about this.
Yeah.
So this was only released in the United States. It has never been. It hasn't been released anywhere else. And you can play as both human forces and the beast hordes. It's in this like medieval,
it seems cool,
fantasy realm.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one. Anytime Nintendo does this is not for Japanese. This is for
right.
This is what Americans like. I always think that's interesting.
I think that's interesting too. The studio that actually developed it, Nintendo published it, but the studio that developed it is a British studio. Still only released in North America.
Yeah.
So the Japanese were like, Brits, make something for the Americans.
But no, thank you. We pass.
We pass. We don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you don't get to publish it in your home country. No one does. So yeah, Warlocked. Yeah, I absolutely.
Sure.
Look, if we can have Quest for Camelot on there, that said that so strangely. Quest for Camelot on there, we can have Warlocked.
Mickey's Speedway USA.
Hilarious.
I've never played any of these.
No, me neither. There's a Nintendo 64 one. They're both developed by Rare.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean,
yes,
we'll never see it, of course, because it's a Disney property. But yeah, absolutely. Bring it on over. And then we wrap up the Game Boy library with Pokemon Crystal, which I think you and I are still of the opinion that they'll find a way to release those games, but they will also find a way to make you pay for them.
Should we jump to the Nintendo 64 then?
Yes, let's jump to the Nintendo 64. We're doing good here. These the Nintendo 64, the list gets smaller. First of all, it took Nintendo forever to put out games on Nintendo 64. There'd be times where like 2 games would come out a year, and you'd be like, "Well, great, we got these 2 games." So there's only a handful that have not made it onto the Switch already. But the first one that we're going to bring up feels like one of the most glaring to me. Diddy Kong Racing.
They have enough of a relationship with Microsoft where
yes,
this feels like Donkey Kong 64 also is not on here, but this feels like a Donkey Kong Country release schedule type thing again, where
Yes.
I think they're holding it for a marketing beat.
Yeah. And like we're due for something, for like August. It's kind of weird there hasn't been. Well, I guess we just got
Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, Mystery Dungeon Pokemon. Both Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong 64 seem like it's a matter of time before they put them out. There was a version of Command and Conquer that Nintendo published in 1999.
Yeah, Command and Conquer was everywhere.
Yep.
And then Nintendo published their own, like handled the publishing duties for it. Maybe even developed it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
For the Nintendo 64 version.
Should we lump this in with StarCraft 64 because that's another Nintendo published game that is obviously like
tactical.
Yeah. Well, and just that is also like very clearly not developed by Nintendo or it's StarCraft,
Right.
And I feel like neither of those make any sense bringing them to Switch, right?
Right.
They probably have too many like thorny issues to sort out. But it would be interesting to see how one of those games plays with a Nintendo 64 controller. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me intuitively.
Yeah.
All right, we're hopping around the board here a little bit, so let's get back on track. Super Smash Brothers.
Another one that's really, to me, interesting that it has not been put on NSO yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder if like this is the same sort of issue as like the Super Mario RPG, where it's like they would feel as though they're like blocking a game they're currently selling by having the Nintendo 64 version of it available. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I can see that for Mario RPG. For Smash Brothers,
they're just such hugely different games.
Yeah. Like Smash Brothers truly, I feel like, is a curiosity to go back to. I can't imagine that somebody would pay for a Plus expansion pack.
Yeah.
And play the Nintendo 64 version of Smash Brothers
and be like,
that would
I'm
deter.
good.
Yeah, like that would deter them.
I got my fill
from getting the new one.
Yeah. I mean, but also maybe it sort of does though. Like if someone is just looking to play a Smash Brothers game, like the franchise has enough like clout that could be the reason someone gets back into games. And if you don't have the option to do that as part of something you're already subscribed to, just buy Ultimate.
Yeah. And it's a weird one. It's, we've talked a lot about how I would just love to be a fly on the wall and how they decide.
How are they making these decisions?
And this is one I'd be interested to know the reason for.
All right. Moving on to Banjo-Tooie. I would have said get out of here, but they put Banjo-Kazooie on this thing.
Yeah, another one, what was it? A couple of directs ago where they made a big deal about a bunch of Rare games coming. There's clearly a good relationship.
Including Perfect Dark.
Yeah, so there's clearly a good relationship there. This one also just feels like a matter of time.
Yep. And I never played Tooie. I played the heck out of the original Banjo-Kazooie, but not Tooie, so I would love that.
Hey You Pikachu.
Yeah.
This one I don't think will come to Nintendo Switch Online on the Switch because it is controlled through voice commands.
Right.
And there's no microphone on the Switch.
Do we think we're waiting for Switch 2, which will have a microphone, and it'll appear there?
Interesting. Yeah, maybe.
Isn't it also like notoriously bad at hearing like the voice commands? Like it basically doesn't work.
I don't know. I've never played it. I don't know if it has the reputation for never working, but I would absolutely believe that it is really finicky.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just say we don't need this one. Thank you, Hey You Pikachu, but we don't need it. Mickey Speedway USA, which is the Nintendo 64 version of this game. Again, it's just never going to happen because it's Mickey Mouse, also developed by Rare.
And then Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yes, which we touched on earlier as well.
Maybe now that they have the mature Nintendo 64 app, that it might end up there.
Yeah, because there's like nothing else on that. So they may as well.
Yeah.
They may as well. They made a whole separate app for it. So why not. All right, Mark. Game Boy Advance?
Yeah, closing things out with the Game Boy Advance.
And so I think there are, we're only really doing the games that came out in North America here. So I feel like there are a lot of GBA, although Mother 3 is on our list. Anyway, I know there are like Japanese exclusives that we are not talking about here. And of course, we want them all to come over to the Game Boy Advance. Starting, though, with Wario Land 4.
Yes. I mean,
Again, right.
Bring it over. Let's have a Wario Land Renaissance so that way we get a new Wario Land game.
Yes. Or even if we don't get a new one, like, let's just, come on. Come on.
Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland.
Yeah, I mean, so we do have Kirby and the Amazing Mirror on the GBA already as part of the service, but like, yeah, why not? Like, the Kirby games can start to feel like redundant when you have like too many of them, but it didn't stop them with the Mario games, so yeah, let's get that on there. I'm less excited. That feels less urgent to me.
Yeah, I
than
feel
a lot
the same
of
way.
a lot of the rest of these, but
Mario versus Donkey Kong.
Feels like they won't do this, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's the Mario RPG thing
Yep.
all over again.
Yep. Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. This is so the first Fire Emblem on GBA is on the thing. It's weird to me that Sacred Stones is not part of it and not listed back in the day of like games that would be coming. It's just so strange because like it feels like a sister game to the first one. And like remember when Golden Sun came out and they were like Golden Sun and Golden Sun the Lost Age. Lost Age, Lost, is that right? Whatever.
I'm just shrugging. I don't know.
Mark is shrugging. He's refusing to help me.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to know where it is. That's all.
Another one where I think it will appear at some point.
It
is the Lost Age.
I agree with that. Next up,
Pokemon Emerald. Enough said.
Yep, we know what we think about that. Now, WarioWare Twisted. So we do have WarioWare Mega Micro games on the GBA. That is available on Switch. But the Twisted version, they released 2 different WarioWare games on Game Boy Advance. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and the mini games here controlled through like a gyroscope that was in the cartridge itself.
Right. You would think they could release this alongside Kirby's Tilt and Tumble, which controlled the same way.
Exactly. So we know it can be done.
Right.
So it would be. I would like to see this brought over. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. And I think it would be a blast.
Drill Dozer is next. This is the Game Freak developed game published by Nintendo. It's like a platformer. I know this game only by reputation, which is that it's really fun. It would be cool for it to eventually make its way over to NSO for sure. Yeah.
Just like super bright and fun graphics and like borderline physics based, like charging up the drill and it seems really cool. Should be on there.
I think we should finish with the one that's next on our list. So
I
let's
agree.
Jump to Final Fantasy VI Advance.
Right. Published by Nintendo? Weird.
I don't think that there is any chance that this will come to NSO because Square is selling their classic games this generation.
Right.
And, there's the pixel remakes of the Final Fantasy series that they want you to buy, not get this from Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, and they are Square Enix is totally missing from all of the NSO libraries. So yeah, would not expect to see Final Fantasy VI Advance. I could see them selling that specific version of it, but they'll be selling it for sure. Now we can end with the one that you said we should wait to end with, and it's Mother 3.
Yeah, has been much talked about over the years about is it coming to America?
Right.
Is it not?
Well, so we've seen an awful lot of games that had never been localized outside of Japan coming to NSO libraries. However, we have not seen them changed, translated, anything in any way. If you're playing these games, you have to be able to read Japanese, and sometimes not a big deal, right? You're playing Mysterious Murasame Castle, you don't get a couple little like lines on the screen, and you're like, fine, it's okay, I can still run around. But like Mother 3, a 16-bit style RPG with like tons of dialogue and menus and stuff, what would be the point of bringing it over?
Yeah. And
without localizing it.
And if they were going to localize it, I think they would charge for it separately.
Yes.
Kind of like they did with the Fire Emblem remake that they did a few years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also we didn't mention it, I guess, because it these are all except for Mother for some reason. These are all games that came to the US, but like Famicom Detective Club, right? If you're going to go through the trouble of localizing these things with so much text, you may as well just remake it and sell it instead of making it part of like your subscription service.
Yep.
So, I guess it's possible that they would do this.
And technically you can access it if you're subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online because you just create a Japanese account.
Right.
And you can access it that way. But no, I do not think the Mother 3 will be part of Nintendo Switch Online outside of Japan.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, and then finally, the Sega Genesis. Very few Nintendo published games.
Yeah, interesting.
On Genesis, so we don't have anything to say on that one. Mark, before we close out of this, were you seeing any like trends or noticing anything like in particular that feels like missing from these libraries? It's kind of tough. We've been talking about them for a while.
I was surprised at how many of the heavy hitters are already out there.
Yeah.
And there are obviously ones that I would like to see come to the system, but it's already I don't think I realized how full the libraries already are.
Yeah, the libraries are very full. There are 263 by my count. 263 games available on Nintendo Switch Online, plus expansion pack. That's 78 NES games, 63 Super NES games. Where it still feels like they are dragging behind is on the newer ones, the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance.
And I do think the horrible, terrible, ugly truth of all of this
is
whenever I was saying, yes, bring it over, it's because I want to add it to the collection, but I'm not going to play.
Not going to play most of these,
I haven't played 99% of the games that are on NSO
99%?
right now.
99%?
I would guess.
Oh, come on. You've played more than... We've recorded shows about... So, 1% would be 2.6 games. You've played more than 2.6 games.
Okay, I've played more than 2.6 games.
You've probably played 20% of these games.
Okay, so 80% of these
I
haven't played and have no intention of ever playing.
I just want us to be precise, that's all.
I forgot you had the spreadsheet.
I have the
so
spreadsheet.
You can check my math.
Yeah, I can. That's why I do it, is just so I can check you. All right, Mark, let's close this out. I would be interested if we missed anything. Again, using the resource that I tapped, I'm sure there are. I mean, obviously, Mole Mania was missing, but I caught that. I caught Mole Mania. So other games, please, shout us out on the Discord. Let us know. Let us know if we judged anything too harshly. Maybe Play Action Football is like the greatest game ever.
We really gave it to Play Action Football.
Just again and again and again. We said, get out of here. Also, if you have a solution for the light gun, power pad, and Rob
the
games,
robot,
that we have not discussed, feel free to hit us up there or email us, Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our 16-bit patrons, Connor McKay, Patrice Millette, and Kyle Seaborn. We appreciate each and every one of you. We appreciate everyone who's listening or participating in the Discord, the Patreon. Everyone's great. It's super fun to do this, and I'm glad we have a little community around this. Join the Discord if you have not already. Email us. We'll send you an invitation. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller. Excuse me. Hold on. We have to stop. Because we didn't say Zoda's Revenge. Star Tropics 2.
Oh my gosh.
And I realized that by this point, people have probably turned off the episode, but we need to go back.
Well, first, we just need to take a moment.
Yes.
Because if anyone is going to be carrying a torch for Zoda's Revenge, Star Tropics 2,
it's going to be us.
It's going to be this show. So first of all, shame on us
for
neglecting our duty as
That's right.
protectors of Star Tropics.
Right, we failed you today.
But
I stopped the music mid go.
We caught ourselves.
We are not ready to close out yet.
No.
This game not as good as the original Star Tropics. But so weird.
Needs to be there.
Needs to.
Because it is such a curiosity.
Yeah. Mike goes time traveling.
Some little kid is going to be subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yep.
And they're just going to wander into the NSO app, be clicking around, see something called Zoda. It'll spark something within them.
It'll be alphabetically last. Even after Zelda.
Yeah.
Right?
It'll spark something within them. It'll change their life. For good or for ill, who's to say?
Well, because they'll be like, I'm traveling through time. I'm seeing prehistoric man times. I'm seeing ancient Egypt times. I'm seeing Sherlock Holmes times. Yes, it presents Sherlock Holmes as though he were a real historical figure. We stand forever. A game as silly as Zoda's Revenge.
Oh my
Star
gosh,
Tropics 2.
It would be a sliding doors moment for anyone who encounters it, and for that reason alone, Zoda's Revenge should be on Nintendo Switch Online, and I'm so glad that you caught that before we close this out.
Honestly, I don't know what spurred that, like why that happened just then in my head.
Yeah.
But it implies to me that there are other games that we have definitely missed here. So like shout them out. We got to keep this conversation going. But for right now, how do I just with 8-Bit Betty? We're closing out here. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening. For real this time.